Hey, fifth grade, welcome back for another day of distance learning. Today is Wednesday, May 6th, and we're going to do math review together. So, I'm going to tell you what you need to be prepared to watch this video. So, besides for watching this video, you need to have the physical or the electronic packet open up to today's work. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that because I don't think all of us are doing that. So you should have the fifth grade distance learning folder open. You click on the week that is this week, week 8, May 4th through May 8th. Then you click on the subject that you're doing. We're doing math review. And then you click on the day, math review for Wednesday. That way you're able to see the questions and complete the questions on your own, independent from this video, and you're only using the video to check your work. Please make sure that you have open the packet of work and you have a piece of scratch paper and a writing utensil ready to solve the problems. Come back to the video when you have everything ready to go. So for today's math review, you're going to be going over the following questions. So you're going to go ahead and solve all of them right now, and then you're going to come back to the video when you have your answers and you're ready to check your work. So pick up your pencil or your writing utensil, go ahead and get started and solve all problems. Come back when you are done. Okay, for the beginning of math review today, we needed to determine whether or not the numbers or fractions we were given were between 0 and 1/2, equal to 1/2, between 1/2 and 1, or greater than 1. So notice that all of the benchmarks we're comparing our numbers to are fractions. So a way to make this more easy to understand for yourself and friendly for you is to rewrite any of the numbers that you are given that are not written as fractions and rewrite them as fractions. So we have here 4/10, 1 and 5/100, and those are the only two that are not written as fractions. How can I rewrite those decimals as fractions? Well, 4/10 would be 4/10. And for 1 and 5/100, we would write it as a mixed number, 1 and 5/100. Again, all I did was really interpret those decimals as fractions, and it turns out that the way that we read them helps you to understand how to write them as a fraction. We read this decimal 4/10, we write it as 4/10. We read this decimal as 1 and 5/100, and we write it as 1 and 5/100. So now that we have all of our numbers written as fractions, we'll be able to understand which benchmark they fall into. The first one here was done for us. 4/10 was labeled as between 0 and 1/2. So one thing that's going to help us figure out if it's equal to 1/2 or less than 1/2 is if we remind ourselves what half of our denominator is. Our denominator here is 10. Half of 10 is 5. So in order for this number to be equal to to be equal to 1/2, it needed to be 5/10. It is not 5/10, it's less than 5/10, it's only 4/10. So we know that we can classify it as between 0 and 1/2. Let's use the same strategy with number 2. 7/10. Half of 10 is 5. So the fraction that would have been equal to 1/2 is 5/10. Now we need to compare 7/10 to 5/10. Is it bigger or less than? 7/10 is bigger than 5/10. So we know it's not between 0 and 1/2. It's not equal to 1/2. Is 7/10 greater than 1 whole? No, because 1 whole would be 10/10. 7/10 is less than 10/10. So we know it's between 1/2 and 1. And I'll put that in a different color so that stands out. Great. Let's do the next one. 12/9. Right away, what do you notice about this fraction? Without doing any math, you should have been able to realize that this was a fraction greater than 1 because our denominator is 9 and our numerator is 12. And 12, our numerator, is bigger than our denominator. So we know right away that this fraction is greater than 1. We know that just because we understand what fractions greater than 1 are. So we did not have to do any math in order to determine that. 1 whole would have been 9/9. 12/9 is bigger than 9/9. Our next number is 1 5/100. Again, right away, because this is an FGTO, sorry, not an FGTO, it's a mixed number, and we have 1 whole and then a fraction, we already know that this is greater than 1 because we have 1 whole plus a fractional amount. So we don't have to do any math to understand that this number is greater than 1. This is relying a lot on what we already understand about numbers to help us. Next, we have 50/100. Great. So let's start with determining half of our denominator. Our denominator is 100. What is half of 100? Right, it's 50. So since our fraction is 50/100, we know that this number is equal to 1/2 because our numerator is exactly half of our denominator. 50 is 1/2 of 100. The next number is 51/100. Well, it's greater than 50/100, so we know it cannot possibly be equal to 1/2 because we just said that half of 100 is 50. And if it's greater than 1/2, it's definitely not between 0 and 1/2. Is 51/100 greater than 1? No, because 1 whole would have been 100/100, and we only have 51 of them. So our answer here is between 1/2 and 1. Last one is 1/9. We should start by figuring out half of 9. What is half of 9? Half of 9 is 4 1/2, or 4.5, 4 5/10. So in order for this fraction to be equal to 1/2, the numerator would have had to have been 4.5. And it's not that. So this is not equal to 1/2. It's less than 4.5 because our numerator is only 1, so we can automatically cancel between 1.5 and 1 and greater than 1. 1/9 is less than 1/2 because half of 9 is 4.5 and 1 is less than 4.5. So therefore, this fraction is between 0 and 1/2. Nice job with that section. Let's go on to the next one. So next, we needed to solve some problems multiplying whole numbers by fractions greater than 1. Sorry, these are not fractions greater than 1. We're multiplying whole numbers times fractions. Some of them are fractions greater than 1, but some of them are not. So this is relying on the knowledge that we learned in 4th grade, because in 4th grade, you learned how to multiply a whole number times a fraction. So who can go ahead and share with the class? How do you multiply a whole number times a fraction? When you multiply a whole number times a fraction, you multiply the whole number and the numerator, and you leave the denominator the same. In the example at the top, it shows you that. 6 times 2/3. They multiplied the whole number 6 times the numerator 2 and left the denominator the same. 6 times 2 over 3. And then you go ahead and solve. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 over 3 can be simplified to 4 wholes. So we're going to go ahead and go over A and B together. Then you're going to check your work against mine with C and D. 14 times 3/7. First, you multiply your whole number and your numerator, and you leave the denominator the same. 14 times 3 over 7. And that equals 42/7. We can simplify this using our fact power knowledge. 42 divided by 7 is equal to 6. B. 3/4 times 36. We multiply our whole number times our numerator and leave our denominator the same. 36 times 3 over 4. That equals 108/4. 108 divided by 4 equals 27. It's not appropriate to leave your answer as 108/4 because that's a fraction greater than 1. You should try to simplify. And if you do the repeated subtraction, you will find out that there are 27 groups in 100, 27 groups of 4 in 108. So as you can see, when I'm doing these problems, I write out each step so that I don't get confused or make any mistakes. First, I write the expression for my new numerator over my denominator. Then I solve for the numerator over the denominator. And last, I simplify. So now I want you to check your work for C and D against my work. If you're finding that you did not get similar answers or that you made silly mistakes, go back and double check your work and revise so that you are showing all of your steps and you are doing really careful math work. Pause the video here to do that. For the last problem, you needed to solve 4 7/8 times 2 1/5. Here we're multiplying mixed numbers, so we need to make sure we're finding all of our partial products. As you can see below, I used an area model to make sure that I found all of my partial products. Your job is going to be to check your work against mine, making sure that you found all partial products correctly and that you got the correct final answer. If you find that you did not find all partial products, you should redo your work by making an area model. And if you find that you made a silly mistake, then go back and revise your work so that you are prepared for today's exit ticket. Today's secret code for your Math Review exit ticket is PUMA, P-U-M-A, PUMA, P-U-M-A. That's it for Math Review today. Go ahead and finish revising your work, check in with your teacher if you need a conference, or move on to your exit ticket.